What's up everybody, Jason from Jason's Exotic Reptiles. In this video, I'm going to show off one of the really cool species I got at the New York White Plains Reptile Expo. I got a lot of backlash on that video because of how we titled it. It was, "Why This Snake Cost Me $10,000." Now, that specific snake that I showed, which was a Brazilian BCC, actually was already paid for. That didn't cost me anything at the Reptile Expo. But I did go and I spent over $10,000 and everybody said, we want to see what else you got. So I'm going to create a whole video series to show you guys in pieces because I can't let them all out of the bag at once, but I'm going to show you what I got at that show. One of the species I got was Woma Pythons. Now, Woma Pythons have been on my list for a very long time. They've been really hard to find. I stumbled across them at this expo and I bought 4 of them, 2 males, 2 females. So this is something that my goal this year was to bring in 5 new species of snake. Now that's technically subspecies 2 because I got some boas. I'll show you those at a future video. But the Woma Pythons was something that I just have always been fascinated with. Since the early 2000s or late 90s, I saw these on a Discovery Channel documentary, but I always wanted some Woma Pythons and I just thought that they were fascinating. They have this really awesome striped back pattern with these bright orange heads, and they are semi-cannibalistic, so you have to be really careful when breeding. And I think that cannibalistic component kept me away from them for a long time. These are an Australian species of python. They're generally stay in more dry or arid climates, but they can do very well with some humidity in there too. So I've always wanted them, and I saw them, and I just had to get them. Their bellies are just really cool, and I have to say, they're not as smart as boas. Maybe they're smarter than I'm giving them credit for, but they are kind of, the way they bite and the way they defend themselves is very different. They kind of headbutt, which is really interesting. And that whole element of a different kind of snake, it was just piqued my curiosity. I had to go for them. So I bought that pair, as I mentioned. This is one of the males. He actually is in shed. So when he's out of shed, he's super vibrant, but incredible animals. I mean, I got them in and I look at them every day. I come down and I open up the bins and I interact with them. And when they first come out, they're kind of nervous and defensive. But once they're out, you can see this guy is very calm. They usually eat pretty readily. However, they can be more challenging to get started. Not as challenging as some species, but more challenging than, let's say, a boa or a ball python. Their food response is kind of mixed between defensive and really going after that food, but it's just a really, I can't keep saying, it's a really different, interesting, unique species of python. I'm very, very happy I got these. They will get around 5 to 6 feet. Some get larger, some get smaller. They're just in a really reasonable size range, which is another thing that I was looking for, as animals that can stay within a rack system or within a somewhat non-arboreal caging type, which kind of eliminates a lot of potential species for me, like carpet pythons or bredls and things like that. So these really filled that gap that I was looking for. And I hear they're harder to breed. At least they're easier to breed, but harder to get the eggs to go full term. So egg incubation might need to keep a little drier than what I would do for, let's say, a Burmese python. Otherwise, the eggs will die in the process of getting incubated. But I'm really curious to see if I can breed these in the future. I will say that this was not purely a business decision. Now, where I am in my business and my career with reptiles is that I am able to have this solid foundation of these animals that I have. And I always recommend with people is don't expand too quickly. If you're focused on boas or ball pythons or different types of tree boas, whatever it may be, build that foundation before you really start expanding too much. I've grown my business enough that if these never breed for me, it's fine because these are just a pure hobby, passion type of project, just keeping me interested and engaged in what I have in the day-to-day. But I wouldn't recommend somebody who's a newer breeder just kind of pick a direction and stick with that direction before you get into something like a Woma Python or even different locales of boas. Is you need to make sure you have that focus and you have that foundation built and understood before you expand into something like this. Others may disagree and diversify. The challenge with that is that now you're trying to master 5 or multiple species instead of just staying focused on, let me master this one, let me pull something else in. And that's the approach that has treated me very well, is I've kind of mastered, okay, Burmese pythons, boas, ball pythons, rainbow boas. Let me keep pushing the limits of what I can do. I've bred a lot of species in the past, and I've never worked with these Australian pythons before. but they're more of a passion project. And as I grow through my business and my experience with reptiles, I'm trying to fill those passion projects a little bit more. I'm never going to have 50 Woma Pythons or 100 Woma Python, or even 10, to be honest. I really like keeping the group small. I may get another pair just because anytime I get into a new species, I always like to have a 3.3 at minimum. And this is even subspecies like locales of boas. I always like to have at least a 2.2 at a minimum. 3.3 is ideal. And if I can have a 4.4, 4 males, 4 females, that's even better. But this allows me to provide customers a little bit something different to my website or to wherever I'm posting these animals, and kind of changes up the variety. It spices it up a little bit, gives a little bit different of an offering. But I will never, as I mentioned, have 50 Woma Pythons and become a Woma Python breeder. I don't think there's a market to sustain that. So pick what you like first, expand in that area, learn to breed them, master that, and then spice it up a little bit. Get something that might challenge you. So this, I believe, is a $1,200 purchase out of my $10,000 plus that I spent at the show. Very reasonable in price. I do think they're going to go up in price as demand starts to increase. We cannot get new animals from the wild from Australia. So everything in captivity is just here. So just like all the other locales that we have, or many locales that we have, we cannot import them. So what has happened historically in the past is that people start buying them. They start looking for something different, and breeders are breeding them, and they're selling out faster than they can make them, which drives the price up. It's just like every other supply and demand and economic component. And the economics of these is we cannot get more. So what we have in the United States is what we have. And as the demand goes up and the supply stays the same or does not keep up with that demand, that's going to raise the prices. And I think the Woma Pythons are a really cool, interesting buy. They will never replace a ball python or a boa. They're never going to get to that demand. But I do see them increasing in demand as people start exploring and trying to think what is something else that's maybe a little bit different, gives a little type of a, different type of a brain and thinking process. And Womas are certainly going to fill that gap. At least for me, they filled that gap and that kind of piece of my soul that loves reptiles. And I couldn't pass up the opportunity for these. But you can generally find these animals somewhere around that $300 to $400 price range. So I thought from an investment standpoint, it was a safe buy. They give you a really cool, fascinating animal, striking visual appearance at a fairly affordable price. And I see these as both pets and breeders and just people who appreciate reptiles. And they're not breeding for the morphs. They're just breeding purely for the species itself. And I really like that about Woma Pythons. Now, I hope you guys didn't get too mad about the video. I am going to show you all the species I got. This is just the first video and the first species I'm showing off. So I hope you enjoyed this. Till next video, let's keep it moving.